Well, folks, it's been a minute or two since we've had some news from the folks up in Renton with their hands on the D&D IP, but, well, what can I say? Things have been a little bit busy around the Delver's Dungeon here, so we're going to jump right into that. But before we do, if you haven't already, please do click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications to find out about when we're going to do our live streams and when we are going to release these newsy type videos to keep you guys up to date on stuff that we think is important that you might like to hear. So with that said, thanks for watching. Let's get right into it. This is, of course, you probably read the title. You clicked on it. You're here on the video. This is not good news from Wizards of the Coast. And I know we tend to focus on the positive and the old school here, but I think, and I'll discuss this at the end of the video, that this may have a significant negative impact even on us who appreciate classic D&D. So with that said, let's get into this. Late in October, Wizards of the Coast Hasbro released a couple of bits of info. Some news came out. Things are not looking good for Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. And so we start with this article. This comes to us from Tabletop Gaming News. And I, of course, will link to both of these articles down in the description below if you want to check that out. This is Daniel Kling Lorenston says, more layoffs hit Wizards of the Coast amid corporate reorganization. There are fresh indications of more layoffs at Wizards of the Coast, with news coming directly from those impacted. Associate Influence Manager Dixon Dubois announced on Twitter that he had been laid off as part of a corporate reorganization. Dubois expressed his dismay, saying, "Unfortunately, I was informed today that my position on Wizards D&D has been impacted as part of a corporate reorganization. I have been laid off. More words will come later. For now, I am just heartbroken." And then on 10/24, WotC confirmed the layoffs, and they have a update we'll get to at the end of the article. And there is Dixon's tweet there, and Dixon Dubois played a significant role in building relationships with the community. His contributions were widely recognized amongst content creators as helping Wizards of the Coast maintain strong connections during major events and product releases. The corporate reorganization remains vague, with concerns about what this means for the future of Wizards of the Coast and its structure. Wizards of the Coast has yet to issue an official statement regarding this development. This is not the first time Wizards of the Coast has faced significant layoffs in recent years. In December 2023, and we reported on this here on the channel, we did a video on it if you want to click on that one. Hasbro, the parent company of Wizards of the Coast, announced a round of layoffs that affected 1,100 staff members, many of whom were part of Wizards of the Coast. This came after an earlier round of 800 layoffs at the beginning of 2023, bringing the total number of positions eliminated last year to over 1,900, marking a 20% workforce reduction. The layoffs were part of a broader strategy by Hasbro to navigate financial challenges amid a struggling toy market, while also cutting costs by selling their stake in E1 and closing their Providence, Rhode Island offices. Of course, I think the article kind of overlooks a couple of points, namely that Hasbro and Wizards had kind of shot themselves in the foot on the PR front with the whole OGL debacle, and then again, Wizards of the Coast committing just seemingly one gaffe after another, including sending Pinkertons after a Magic the Gathering YouTuber. It was bad in 2023. And so here's the 10/24 update. Toybook.com has revealed that Hasbro has announced significant organizational changes as part of its ongoing restructuring efforts. In a letter to Hasbro employees, CEO Chris Cox stated less than 100 employees will be affected by a workforce reduction as WotC seeks to streamline operations and speed up its product development processes. These changes are aimed at reducing the time to to market by at least 3 months with a focus on design to value, according to Cox. The letter goes on to say that the restructuring reflects Hasbro's increasing focus on digital, direct, and technology-driven innovation, with several leadership roles being redefined. You don't have to read between the lines here to understand that this means that the focus is getting players on D&D Beyond and Sigil while shifting book sales over to digital. Technology-driven innovation also likely refers to projects such as Sigil, but also to generative AI, which Cox seems to be a big fan of. Boy, isn't he? And we've talked about that. And the entire letter can be read over at toybook.com. So let's have a quick look there at his letter. The changes are as follows. Commercial integration into Hasbro's Toy and Wizards of the Coast business units. Tim Kilpin will expand toys and licensing entertainment to include global brand, regional marketing, and commercial groups into one team. Lisa Gilbert will lead the commercial business for the Americas, and Bhavesh Samoya will lead commercial for EMEA and APAC. Also reporting to Tim, Kim Boyd will take on expanded role of president, global toy brands and licensed consumer products. According to Tim Kilpin, the toy leads and licensing will report to her. Brian Baker on board games. Hasbro is uniting design and development as well as demand and supply planning. The newly combined innovation, design, and development team led by Dean Carley will work to speed innovation and design to value efforts at the source of production. And then it just kind of goes on. And here's the letter. Team, today we are announcing organizational changes to drive our playing to win strategy. These changes aim to empower teams to make quicker decisions and deliver innovation faster. Our commitment as a leadership team is to offer each of you a great place to work with opportunities for impact and growth. And, he just kind of goes on. I personally think that's a big lead in to turning over a lot of creation to AI, which again, as the article notes, Cox is a big fan of. And I don't wonder that the next D&D books that come out once they've squeezed classic dry will be AI-generated art and AI-generated content. So yeah, take that as you will. But so that's the Wizards of the Coast hit there. But let's take a look at the other dismal news from Hasbro. And this is Hasbro's third quarter report shows decline in D&D revenue despite 2024 launch. Now, the 2024 launch we're talking about, of course, was the much anticipated release of 6th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So they actually lost profits in the third quarter. And I wonder if that's a bit of the Osborne effect. People stopped buying 5th edition in anticipation of 6th edition, so that won't be something we really know about until well into 2025. And I'm sure they may bundle that up with any gains they got from Christmas toy and game sales and say, hey, no, things are fine. There was just a little bit of a dip there as people transitioned from 5th edition to 6th edition. But let's go ahead and read the article, also by Daniel Kling-Lawrenston. And again, I will link this below. Despite the highly anticipated release of the 2024 Player's Handbook, the Dungeons & Dragons brand appears to be struggling to make a significant impact on Hasbro's bottom line. While strong sales initially prompted a second print run, Hasbro's Q3 earnings report suggested that the launch may have underperformed as D&D failed to receive as much attention from company leadership. The 2024 Player's Handbook, along with the soon-to-be-released Dungeon Master's Guide, is shaping up to be a hit for Wizards of the Coast. However, during the Q3 earnings report, Hasbro CEO Chris Cox and CFO Gina Getter chose to focus on Magic the Gathering and other segments rather than D&D. And of course, guys, this goes hand in glove. D&D is by far not the biggest moneymaker for Hasbro. It's not even the biggest moneymaker for Wizards of the Coast. That is Magic the Gathering. Hasbro's overall financial performance has been a mixed bag. The total revenue dropped 15% year over year, excluding the sale of E1, while gaming revenue saw a slight uptick, up 3% year to date, but down 6% in quarter three. Wizards of the Coast operating margin of 44.9% remains impressive, though the third quarter decline in revenue has raised concerns about the long-term trajectory of D&D. Much of the drop was attributed to the significant revenue generated by Baldur's Gate in quarter three 2023, which had an outsized impact on last year's figures. Of course, I think a lot of people came into tabletop D&D through Baldur's Gate 3 because it was the video game being played by streamers and influencers and all that jazz. So a lot of people turned their attention to the tabletop game. Dungeons & Dragons, though performing well in the marketplace, appears to be under pressure to maintain the momentum of its 5th edition, especially as the full slate of core books for 2024 rolls out. Wizards of the Coast saw a 5% revenue decrease in quarter 3 2024 compared to the same quarter last year, largely due to the absence of Baldur's Gate 3 revenue, which had significantly boosted earnings in 2023. Many hope the 2024 Player's Handbook would help soften this decline, but it seems the latest release hasn't compensated for the drop. I personally think their expectations were just set too high with the Baldur's Gate uptick. Despite the dip, the overall operating margin for Wizards of the Coast remains robust at 44.9%, only slightly down from last year's 47.0%. While a 3.1 decrease may seem notable, margins above 40% are still considered highly favorable in the industry. Magic the Gathering, meanwhile, continues to be a strong performer with revenue up 3%, helping to offset some of the losses from D&D. And of course, you can see there that, right there, Magic the Gathering is a strong performer. It's just a license to print money. Then it goes on. Year to date, Wizards of the Coast performance has been relatively strong. Revenue for the first 9 months of 2024 is up 7%, but hey, half of that's been deleted. And the operating profit has surged by 30%, reflecting solid operational efficiency and cost management. And I personally think that's probably because of all the jobs that they cut in 2023. Additionally, tabletop gaming as a whole saw a modest 3% increase in revenue. The strong numbers might have more to do with the massive amounts of layoffs as Hasbro and WotC have seen in the last few years, which has helped reduce costs rather than a high number of sales. I agree, obviously. A particularly worrying issue is the fact that Dungeons & Dragons had previously been highlighted in its quarterly earnings as a bright spot in Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro's struggling portfolio. Now it seems like it's just Magic the Gathering that's keeping them afloat. As Hasbro continues to adjust its business strategy, the outlook for Dungeons & Dragons remains unclear. Despite strong initial sales from the 2024 core books, they have not made substantial impact on the company's overall financial performance. Additionally, Wizards of the Coast recently experienced further layoffs, and we just talked about those, as part of a corporate reorganization aimed at streamlining operations. This restructuring reflects Hasbro's increased focus on digital platforms such as D&D Beyond and efforts to integrate more technology-driven innovation, which refers to their upcoming VTT Sigil, but also generative AI, which CEO Chris Cox has been eager to implement. I think the writing is as clear as a bell. I think they want to start cutting back on creatives and just literally push button, create D&D book, and put it out. They have 50 years of D&D material to feed a generative AI and then the framework for 5th edition and say, write me a book about Ravenloft using the 6th edition rules. And their generative AI will then go to town and do just that. They'll clean it up. They'll pass it through. They'll have some digital correction on the AI generated art. And in the space of a few days, rather than a few months, you've got a new source book out. Will people sit still for a parade of cash grab AI generated stuff? I don't know. Now, of course, the question comes, what might this have to do, if anything, with old school D&D? Well, one thing's for sure. They're not going to spend dime one on any kind of licensing deals. I would hesitate to say that we're going to see anything done as far as the availability of classic Dungeons and Dragons products beyond what is already available on D&D Beyond or Drive-Thru RPG as a PDF or print-on-demand sale. So if you don't already have it, I would send it to Lulu, or maybe take it to your local Staples or someplace to have those classic modules and books that aren't available print on demand, print and bound for your shelves. But as for me, what's my take from this? I just personally think they're plugging the holes as fast as they can. It's clear that D&D profits are down. Are they going to stay down come 2025? We'll see. We'll see. But the fact that they're slashing more jobs, tightening their belts, talking less about Dungeons and Dragons, it's really not good news for the hobby in the overall. And I understand a lot of my fans, a lot of folks who watch this show, you're not fans of new D&D, but a robust hobby really benefits all of us. So we're going to keep our eyes on the bottom lines, both hands on our cash. And remember, guys, don't take nothing from a machine. Peace. I love you all. I'll see you in the next video.